Hello everyone, welcome to MINTIT channel. My name is Aniket Mane and today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic which is passive investing. आज हमारे साथ में जो गेस्ट हैं he is Mr. Umesh Daila, head of passive business in Mirae Asset mutual funds.
Thank you, Aniket. Thank you for having me on the show.
So sir, before starting my questions, I just wanted to start from your journey. Uh, how did you started in investment industry and what's been your experience so far?
Yeah, so I started my career in 2005, to be more precise. And that time, I think understanding mutual fund used to be a challenge. Very
Right.
limited in investors were there. And that time, I remember I started my journey. We used to go to meet investors and try to teach them investing. And that time, FD used to be the popular thing, and max to max RDs and all that. So that time, we used to sell that, and then gradually I moved to different locations, and we have been selling active products. Then 2020 I moved to the passive space where the company started. Though they were doing this passive business from 2018 onwards, but 20 was the COVID time, and that time we wanted to push more passive because at that time everything was going on digital. So I moved to passive business, and yes, since last 4 years I've been doing passive. So there's a shift from active to passive. Investors earlier, the challenge which used to face in terms of making them understand about active business. Now the investors are also, I won't say challenge, but yeah, this is a new set of investors, a new set of clients are also adding. So yeah, it's quite interesting, and I must say the audience, the investors, the behavior, everything is shifting, and that's as a result you can see the passive business in India is now started growing significantly.
That's really interesting because my questions are going on this only. After post COVID rally, more passive funds are focused rather than active funds. And what is that shift? We need to understand this. So my first question is: we have seen lot of passive ETF launches in recent times. Are we hinting at bringing the trend seen in developed countries to India?
Yeah, see, when you talk about passive business, this is not a new phenomena for a market like India. We can say little new, but globally it is not that new. I think we can see that the markets like US, Europe have already been pretty well in terms of passive business. So the evolution of investor already happened there, and now they are very in a very right you can say direction where they are adding or choosing active and passive, active or passive, or active plus passive as per their choices in investment or portfolio needs. But in India, I must say it is 2014 onwards it has started growing faster, and now Indian investors are also uh, started adding understanding ETFs in or passive business, passive products into their portfolio. Primarily, I would say 3-4 reasons to it. One, the foremost is the underperformance of actively managed funds. Now, earlier we used to say that in a market like India where alpha was easily available, and most of the fund managers used to do very well. And now the way market is evolving, so investors are or fund managers are getting little tougher for outperforming the underlying index. So that's where the challenge comes in. So वहाँ पे क्या होता है, जब आपका अंडर परफॉर्मेंस आता है, आपको रिटर्न थोड़ा सा एक्सपेक्टेशन से कम मिलना शुरू होता है, तो इन्वेस्टर स्टार्ट लुकिंग फॉर प्लान बी. Because ultimately, as an investor, what I look at is I look at my portfolio returns. So if there is a lack in my portfolio returns because of one or two products, so investors are looking for replacing those products, either with active or the passive one, because passive might not give you alpha, but passive will give you market returns. So one is underperformance. Lately, we have seen, as per SPIVA reports also, there are a lot of pockets where performance of actively managed funds are not doing that great as good as markets. So in some cases, markets are doing better than the actively managed funds. So where investors are choosing. The second reason would be the cost, and it is the cost, I must say, because when it comes to when you buy a say plain vanilla or large cap fund on active side, the expenses on a can go up to 2.5%, and in
Right.
some cases 2.75 also. It purely depends upon what sort of AUM that fund has. But when you go and buy a Nifty 50 based ETF, your expense ratio would be as low as 4 basis point.
Right.
So 4 basis point versus 2.5 basis point or 2.75, there's a lot of gap. Till the time fund manager is delivering that sort of outperformance और वो उतना ज़्यादा अल्फा जनरेट कर रहा है कि जो एक्सपेंस है वो कवर होने के बाद भी मार्केट से ज़्यादा रिटर्न आ रहा है, विच इज़ गुड. बट द मोमेंट यू कम डाउन, तो इन्वेस्टर सोचता है कि क्यों ना मैं फिर एक ऐसे प्रोडक्ट में जाऊँ जो मुझे एटलीस्ट मार्केट का रिटर्न देगा. सो दैट इज ऑल्सो अनदर थिंग. थर्ड थिंग इज ऑब्वियसली पैसिव के पीछे सबसे बड़ा जो एडवांटेज है वो है टेक्नोलॉजी. Because your technology advancement is something which has taken a center stage, because now buying an ETF in a running market going on, it's very easy. I mean, push a button. Like if somebody wants to buy from your platform, they can simply just open the app and they can buy whether they want to buy active or passive, right? So that ease is something which is playing out very well. And
Correct.
that is in passives, especially in ETFs, is going to be maybe is the key from that perspective. Another maybe point is the government or the regulator push. You can see that in 2013-14, when government started, government allowed EPFOs to take a ETF route to participate in equity market, and alongside they said कि whatever disinvestment they want to do, they will explore the ETF route also. So these are two key, I would say announcement which clearly said that the government also wants to push the ETF as an investment vehicle,
Right.
and so that is also maybe the another kind of, I must say, reason. So all 3-4 reasons, and the last and the not the least is the innovation. जो इनोवेशन आपको एक पैसिव फंड प्रोवाइड कर सकता है वो एक्टिव नहीं कर सकता. उसका रीज़न ये है क्योंकि रेगुलेटर हैज़ ऑलरेडी डिफाइंड कैटेगरीज इन एक्टिव साइड. सो जब आपको पता है कि एक कैटेगरी में एक फंड हो सकता है, तो यू नो कि लार्ज कैप है, एक लार्ज कैप होगा, एक मिड कैप होगा, एक स्मॉल कैप होगा. पैसिव में यू हैव plethora of options. You can choose whatever you want to. You can create whatever products you want to. Like in India, we have EV based products on passive platform. We have manufacturing, pure play manufacturing in passive. We have related to ESG in passive. So here ideation is just a starting point. There's no limit to it. So I mean, from an investor standpoint, if you provide them a unique offering, if you provide them something which is not already there into their portfolio, they are definitely getting attracted towards those things. So I mean,
Correct.
these are the things I must say.
Correct, sir. Well, some points are there. I'll come there.
Yeah.
And another questions. My second question is, ETFs, index funds are known for those who do not believe in fund managers' capabilities or just want to rely on benchmark index returns. Do you buy this narrative?
Uh, so what happens is, so I would say answer this way, that in a market like India, alpha is still there, and I firmly believe that there are fund managers who are doing pretty well. There are active funds which are doing very well. So I won't say that alpha is going to be out of the window. It is there. It's going to stay, but if you want to go for innovation side, you can always consider passives or ETFs or anything. Or there are products where you feel that you are okay taking market returns. You don't want additional alpha, or you are okay with what market gives you. That is also something where investor can choose. So it's a mixed bag, I must say. There are investors who okay with market returns. There are investors who want to take more exposure into unique ideas.
Right.
That might happen. So it will purely depend. Like if I give an example, if somebody would have invested in 80s when Sensex started at 100, right? If they would have stayed invested in Sensex itself, today Sensex is at
85,000.
85,000. You do the calculation. You will yourself will realize that if you would have stayed invested in the market itself has given you that sort of return. So there are different both sides for investors. Investor can choose. And if you ask me personally, I consider passives more from an innovation side, because I believe that the products which are not there in my portfolio, I can fill that gap through passives.
Okay. When you're saying about innovations in passive side, my question to it is, we still have segments in shorter duration where there is no availability of passive funds. Like there are some debt categories like ultra short or dynamic asset allocation side. When can an investor see funds coming in these segments, considering the fact that a lot of investors are invested into these categories?
See, so when we say passive fund, the passive fund is always purely rely on an underlying index. Our index is being managed by index providers, and the most important thing while managing any passive fund is the underlying liquidity of underlying securities or bonds, whatever you have. On that side, we have seen there is a little challenge in terms of liquidity when you go beyond overnight. For overnight, I think in ETF space, there is a liquid ETF product which is already there where there is a dividend option, there is a growth option. That is somewhere replicating the overnight strategy. But beyond overnight, I must say with time coming, going ahead, we must see that, and I'm pretty confident that the liquidity of underlying bonds and things will increase, and then I can see that there will be products which will be launched. And I think if there are more takers, I think these kind of products, launching these kind of products, having keeping in mind the liquidity is there, I think it just around the corner. So this will happen, but as of now, it is not happening because of the liquidity issues
Liquidity issue.
which are there in some of the bonds.
Okay. So my next question, sir. Considering the structure of Indian markets, do you believe that stock selection in Indian markets the key where the good stocks in bad sectors and vice versa? How does a new age investor navigate this through index funds?
I think that's a very interesting question. So what happens that I agree with that. So that happens because there are good stocks in bad in sector, and there are bad stocks in good sector. That happens. And in India, when you go for, I just quote for example, like if you go for a IT index or IT stocks. So IT stocks are primarily driven by global news or global. If something happens on US or something, you will see IT stocks might take a hit, both side, positive and negative, depending on the news. So that happens. When you talk about say manufacturing or infra, those are primarily driven by government policies. If Indian government come out with good policies which are beneficiary for that segment, those stocks will do well, and vice versa. If you look at financials, so financials are more driven by say RBI or central government's move or interest rate movement here and there.
Correct.
So there are stocks, there are sectors which behaves depending upon the news, depending upon the global circumstances, and depending upon within country what is happening, whether it is good or bad. So these are challenges which we face, and I think that's where the active investing became so popular, because the fund managers take that call that which sector to go with, keeping current status and the future in mind. But for new age investors, because these investors are very different, these investors, they don't have patience. They want to get into something where they can get immediate reaction, or the stocks which get reacted get the immediate reaction. They want to participate in that. That space, I must say, the passive is the right approach, because passive will give you the entire basket. It won't settle down with one stock. If you want to say buy financial or bank. So if you buy bank ETF or bank related index fund or fund of fund, so you will be buying entire basket of banks, all the banks. The challenge is like if you want to pick a one particular bank stock, or tomorrow that bank didn't do well or some other do well, then you feel like, okay, I wrong it. I took a wrong choice. So that way, I think for a new age investors, I must say, index or ETF, these can be a good starting point where you mitigate the risk where the stock movement will be. You will go with purely on the market movement side. And in a market like India, this will happen. This is true for global markets also, but India, it is little more evident nowadays, because India as a country is also growing.
Growing, right.
So, the way.
Uh, we were talking about the underperformance of active funds. Just two questions below. Uh, so my question on that is, how would you rate passive funds performance when markets are range bound or in downward trajectory?
Mhm.
The fall could be sharper than actively managed.
Mhm.
And what an investor should do in such scenarios? Like we have
देखिए,
seen
जी
2 months before only,
करेक्ट
right?
करेक्ट या सो हर चीज़ के प्रॉज एंड कॉन्स होते हैं. पैसिव बिजनेस, पैसिव फंड्स आर गुड फंड्स व्हेन यू गो फॉर अ लुक फ्रॉम अ मार्केट रिटर्न पर्सपेक्टिव. लेकिन जब ऐसा जो आपने बोला मार्केट मूव हो रहा है, गिर रहा है, बढ़ रहा है या वोलेटाइल है, उस दौरान द लिमिटेशन कह लीजिए, या पैसिव इज ऑलवेज अ रूल बेस्ड स्ट्रेटजी. पैसिव में क्या होता है, व्हेन यू लॉन्च अ पैसिव फंड you have to have an index on it which is replicable. Index is managed by either NSE or BSE or anybody who is having a index creator license. So since it is rule based, so all rules are predefined. If the rule says that these stocks will be part of that index, so then depending upon the short term blip in the market, short term movement in the market, that strategy will not change. The rule will never change. So investor is well aware that okay, this is the strategy, this will go well. Then you have to stay invested for long. My suggestion for any investor, whether it's any kind of market, whether it's a bear market or a sideways market, आप जितना लंबा बने रहेंगे उतना आपके पोर्टफोलियो के लिए पैसिव आपको बेटर देगा. कभी भी नॉट इवन पैसिव, किसी भी तरीके के फंड को, किसी भी तरीके के निवेश को आप शॉर्ट टर्म में अगर जज करने लगेंगे तो थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट हो जाता है कई बार फंड्स के लिए परफॉर्म करना. तो इन्वेस्टर शुड स्टे लॉन्गर. एक साइकिल अगर आप पूरा क्लियर करते हैं तो चांसेस आर वेरी हाई दैट यू विल गेट द डिजायर्ड रिटर्न फ्रॉम एनी काइंड ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट यू विल गेट,
be it active or be
बी
it
इट एक्टिव
passive.
और दोनों केसेस में इन्वेस्टमेंट तो मार्केट ही है ना.
Market.
Correct.
Correct. Now this is a little bit specific from Mirae, sir.
Yeah.
What is the thought process of Mirae Asset, where they are leaders in bringing lots of ETFs passive funds?
Yeah. So we firmly believe that we come from a global background. Mire, as we speak, we operate our passive business out of 11 countries, including US, Korea, Japan, obviously India, Canada, Australia. So all 11 countries we have managed. We are managing more than $169 billion of assets, more than 500 ETFs we are managing. So we have a decent and strong track record of managing passive business globally. So when we started our ETF business in India, the thought was very clear that going ahead in India, this phenomena which is playing out well outside India is going to catch up here. It's going to be here, and that's what you look at, not from passive, other investment strategies also. If something is playing out well globally, sooner or later that will be part of India. Maybe 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, whatever is the time. So we believe that going ahead, active and passive, both strategies will go hand on hand, will work well for anybody's portfolio. So it is not active versus passive. It is for us, when it comes to Mirae Asset, we always consider that if you look at your portfolio closely, you will definitely find some gaps in your portfolio. And that gap can be definitely filled by passive, whether it is ETF or a fund of fund or an index fund. Investors should always keep eyes open, and it should be mindful. So we are thinking that the innovations which we cannot do on the active side, I think those innovations we can provide here on passive side. There are investors who want to consider cost more. I think for them we can provide the plain vanilla products at a lower cost. So the idea is to provide everything to investor, and then investor or advisor can take a call whether that product is good for them or not. So we firmly believe that this is going to be a future where active and passive both will stay together in everybody's portfolio, and that is where we are launching these kind of products.
Okay. Oh, yeah, another question is, do you buy the idea that index investing makes sense to institutional investors where the quantum of money being invested is large? For a retail investor who are investing smaller amounts, what role does an advisor play, since there can't be a one fund suits all strategy?
Yeah, I agree. That's a fair point, because not necessarily that one fund will suit each and everyone. So suitability of a fund, sometimes it is defined by advisors in most of the time. Sometimes investors also taking their own call if they are that much aware. From an institutional client perspective, yes, I agree, because especially the plain broad-based indices related funds like Nifty 50, Next 50, mid caps, or maybe bank ETFs and all that are something where institutional investors are showing more interest, primarily because of cost efficiency and obviously because of the market return. But when it comes to a retail investor should always consider, as I said earlier also, कि आपके portfolio में क्या gap है. एडवाइजर प्लेज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल, बिकॉज क्या होता है मोस्ट ऑफ द केसेस में इन्वेस्टर को आइडिया नहीं है. आई मेट मेनी इन्वेस्टर्स वेयर मोस्ट ऑफ टाइम आई हियर दैट ओके वन ऑफ माय फ्रेंड बॉट दिस, सो आई बॉट दिस. आई डोंट नो वेदर इट इज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर माई पोर्टफोलियो और नॉट,
Random
बिकॉज
investment.
ही सेड कि मैंने इसमें पैसा बनाया, मैंने इसमें लगाया, 2 साल पहले लगाया था, आज उसका रिटर्न तो मैंने बाय कर लिया, विच इज अ रॉन्ग अप्रोच आई मस्ट से. तो इन सच सिनेरियोज एडवाइजर्स plays a very important role, because as an advisor, which I believe they will first look at their risk appetite, risk profiling will happen, and then accordingly the product will be suggested to them. So for a retail, innovation can be one, but yeah, having a good advisor always helps.
In continuation with this question, uh, do you suggest investors to consider their risk profile and goal tenure before investing? And should they really make a basket of passive instead of investing in just single index fund?
Yeah. So I think deciding a goal or having a goal in mind is the key for any investment. Whether you want to, like, give an example. I want to travel, but if I don't know where I have to reach,
Exactly.
then where will I travel?
Correct.
So I have to go to Delhi from, say, Mumbai. So I know my destination, my goal is Delhi, to reach Delhi. So then I'll figure out, I have to reach Delhi, how to reach it. How
Right.
to reach? Should I take a bus? Should I take a train? Should I go by flight? There are ways. Then I choose the vehicle. Similarly, if you know the goal that I have 5 years, 7 year with me, and after 7 year I want to achieve this much AUM or this much wealth, or maybe daughter's marriage or education, whatever, then you know the goal. Now you can define, okay, to reach to that goal, what I need. Do I need only active? Do I need a combination of active or passive and passive, or I have to choose only passive? That's where I think keeping a goal in mind and then deciding on funds always helps. And I think, as I said earlier also, if there are an advisor or there are tools which can give you idea that for such kind of goal, what sort of investment strategy you can play out with. So investors should always keep goal in mind, and then keeping the time horizon they have, they should consider investing.
Which means goal based planning is very important for every investment, correct?
Yes, I think in our day-to-day life also goal is important. Without goal, to sometimes I have heard people saying, "I don't have a goal for my life." So people, you need goal to survive also.
Right.
So goal is something which you require. And I think for investment, it is more important.